Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and a warm welcome wherever you are to our MSCA COFUND webinar. My name is Jane Carrigan, and I'm one of 2 national contact points for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions in Ireland. Our webinar today is focused on the EU's MSCA COFUND programme, a co-financing scheme for doctoral and postdoctoral programmes at regional, national or international level. COFUNDs aim to spread the best practices of the MSCA, fostering excellence in researchers' training, mobility and career development. This is a session for both academic and non-academic organisations based in Ireland, and my colleague from the European Research Executive Agency will tell you more about the programme shortly. There will be a Q&A session, and thank you to those who've already posed questions at registration. You can, of course, post your questions also into the Q&A function, and we will address as many of those as we can. This session will also be recorded and uploaded onto our webpage, and we will post the link to the webpage into the chat function. I'm delighted to say we also have closed captioning available today, and you can alter the size of those captions by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Before we start, I would like to let you know a little of who we are and what we do in the Irish Marie Skłodowska-Curie Office, or IMSCO for short. Our office is supported by the Irish Research Council and jointly operated with the Irish Universities Association. Our mission is to support the research community in Ireland across all sectors and disciplines in applying to MSCA calls and in implementing MSCA projects. We try and do this in a number of ways, including contributing to policy initiatives relevant to the MSCA and promoting MSCA programmes through communication activities such as workshops, information sessions and webinars like this one. We also provide query support to applicants, so if you do have any queries about COFUND in the coming days and months ahead, please get in touch with us. Our contact details will also be placed in the chat. And in collaboration with our MSCA NCP colleagues across Europe, we will produce a COFUND proposal writing handbook for applicants as part of the MSCA NET project. And we'll also offer a proposal pre-review service for applications being coordinated by an Ireland-based organisation. Just to let you know also that the IUA also houses the Euraccess Ireland office, and Euraccess Ireland provide practical support for researchers and hosting organisations with links to research, job and career development opportunities. Euraccess Ireland also operates the Fast Track Immigration Hosting Agreement Scheme, allowing for employment of non-EEA MSCA fellows in Irish academia and industry. And should you wish to avail of Euraccess Ireland support, you can contact my colleague Magda on magda@iua.ie, and we'll put Magda's details into the chat function. So that brings us to our guest speakers for today, and we are delighted to be joined by our panel this afternoon. Alexandra Peterson, call coordinator of COFUND in the European Research Executive Agency, will present an overview of the COFUND 2022 call. And then showcasing a successful COFUND awardee from Ireland, we have Dr. Patrick Morrissey, coordinator of the COFUND project Sparkle and centre manager of IPIC, which is a centre funded by Science Foundation Ireland. We'll begin with Alexandra. Welcome, Alexandra, on what I know must be a terrifically busy day for your team in the Research Executive Agency, as COFUND 2022 is due to open today. So Alexandra, we're going to share your screen from our side. Thank you, Yvonne, for that. And I'll invite you, Alexandra, to begin your presentation as soon as we can see it on the screen, and I see it there now. So over to you, Alexandra.
Thank you, Jane. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexandra Peterson. As Jane said, I am the co-coordinator for the COFUND Action. And I'm very happy to be here today to give you an overview of the COFUND Action and also to present some more details about the call, which, as Jane said, is opening today. Actually, it's just open, so you'll see later on when you check on the portal. So, next slide, please. So, what is COFUND, first of all? So, COFUND is a mono-beneficiary action which co-funds new or existing national, regional, or institutional schemes for doctoral training and postdoctoral fellowships. So, and what's our focus? we focus on spreading the best practice of the Mary Zlodowska's Curie actions by promoting high standard in the recruitment process and excellent working conditions for the researchers. We want to introduce sustainable structuring effects by promoting excellence and sustainable researcher training, international, intersectoral, and interdisciplinary cooperation and mobility. And we also want to encourage the applicants to look for synergy with the cohesion policy funds, as well as with the recovery and resilience facility. So in that case, sometimes programs could focus on a specific disciplines, notably when they are based on smart specialization strategies. So in that case, some projects will focus on their priorities, either national or regional priorities. Next slide, please. So, and what are the modalities that we have? So we have two modalities under COFUND. We have the doctoral programs and the postdoctoral programs. So the doctoral programs, they offer research training activities to allow doctoral candidates to develop and broaden their skill and competences. So that means that the candidates will not have the doctoral degree in that case. So that the training will lead to the award of the degree in at least one EU member state or Horizon Europe associate country. And the training activities offered to the researchers should be based on the EU principles on innovative doctoral training. With regard to the postdoctoral programs, this relates to an advanced researcher training. And it also aims to fund, of course, the researcher training, but also career development fellowship for postdoctoral researchers. In that case, they will, of course, have the doctoral degree already. The program should offer training to develop key transferable skills and competences common to all fields. They should also foster innovation and entrepreneurship and promote, when appropriate, and reward open science practices. Next slide, please. So who can apply? As I mentioned initially, COFUND is mono-beneficiary, therefore is only a single legal entity that can apply. And this entity must be established in an EU member state or Horizon Europe associated country. The conditions for the applicant is that the beneficiary must recruit at least 3 researchers, and that's the minimum required. They are required to host those researchers at their premises and supervise them, or use the implementing partners linked to them to do so. Next, please. So both academic and non-academic sectors can apply. In the case of the academic sector, we have public or private higher education establishments. We have public or private non-profit research organizations. And we also have international European research organizations. Any other organization that doesn't fall into this category would be seen as the non-academic sector. But of course, both, as I said, both sectors are very welcome to apply to the action. Next slide, please. So what are the possible structures that we can have under COFUND? So the first structures that you see on the slide is what we call hierarchical. So we have a research funding organization applying for the grant, and you have institutions implementing the program. There could be universities, there could be the private sector, there could be, in the case that we have laboratories, research centers. But in that case, as I said, so the partners actually will be the ones implementing the training program. On the second option, next slide, please, we have what we call the horizontal structure, where we have, for instance, in that case, a university applying for the program, and you have other partners also involved in the implementation of the program. So basically, in that case, there could be, for instance, a university that, for instance, offer different disciplines for the researchers. And let's suppose that in the case university one, for instance, is taking care of all the disciplines related to the life science, and university two is doing life sciences, and the third, the laboratory is the one where the experiments will be conducted, and so on and so forth. So that's another possibility as well to apply. And the third structure, next slide, please, is what we have the single point. In that case, we have just one institution applying. There are no partners involved, and this institution, this organization, will do everything. This is also possible. There is nothing right or wrong in that, as far as this is well justified in the proposal, and that the evaluators find it credible. Then this is okay as well. This is a possibility. Next slide, please. Now, the type of partners that we have, as I mentioned earlier, we can have of beneficiary together with partners implementing the program. We have two kinds of partners. We have what we call implementing partners, which are legal entities receiving financial contribution via the beneficiary, and they are implementing the action, being doctoral or postdoctoral. The implementing partner is basically receiving the funds via the beneficiary. And the other type of partner that we have is what we call associated partners. They are entities that also participate in the action. For instance, they could be providing training or secondments, but they do not have any right to charge or claim contributions from the beneficiary. Next slide, please. So with regard to the co-funding, we can grant, let's say, the beneficiary a maximum of 10 million euros per beneficiary and per co. This remains unchanged compared to Horizon 2020. Nothing, so it is still the same. With the duration, a program can have a maximum of 60 months duration, and this is also unchanged. It was exactly the same in the Horizon 2020. And the fellowship, each individual fellowship must have a minimum duration of 3 months, which was exactly the same as in Horizon 2020. With regard to the recruitment, the vacancies, they must be widely advertised, and the beneficiary can choose as many channels he or she likes, but it's mandatory that the vacancies are advertised under EUR access. This is a condition that we have, is required by the grant agreement. Next slide, please. So with regard to the eligible researchers, which researchers can apply? So basically, for the doctoral programs, researchers that don't have yet a doctoral degree at the deadline of the co-funded programs and it's mandatory that they are enrolled in a doctoral program. For the postdoctoral programs, the researcher must have a doctoral degree at the deadline of the co-funded programs call. And I just want to bring in your attention to that, because this has changed compared to Horizon 2020, where the beneficiary had the choice concerning the reference date, which could be either the date of recruitment of the research or the call deadline. And now under Horizon Europe, we only have the call deadline. So just pay attention when applying if you apply to COFUND, that you use the correct reference date in that case. Researchers can be of any nationality. There is no restrictions with regarding to that. And the mobility rule is actually the same, meaning that researchers must not have resided or carried out their main activities in the country of the recruiting beneficiary or the implementing partner, I mean the partner recruiting the researcher, for more than 12 months in the 36 months, so in the 3 years immediately before the deadline of the co-funded programs call. And again, here it's only the deadline of the co-funded program call and not the date of recruitment like it used to be in Horizon 2020. Next slide, please. Some more main difference compared to Horizon 2020, and I always like to go through those because it's the second year that we are having, it's the second call that we are having under Horizon Europe, and so I think it's always good to mention those differences so people don't get, let's say, confused and or mistaken by other rules that we had in the past. So research eligibility. This, what we had in Horizon 2020, that was the full-time equivalent research experience, no longer applies. So it's only the degree. So for the doctoral program, researcher must not have a doctorate degree, and for the postdoctoral, they must have the degree, and that's it. Okay, there is no more, research, the equivalent research experience no longer applies in this case. The EU contribution now covers the minimum remuneration required and can be used more flexibly. So this, I think it's an advantage as well, because in the past, the beneficiary would have to put a top up to comply with the minimum required, which is no longer the case now on the Horizon Europe. There will be a possibility to apply for long-term leave and allowance and special needs allowance. This is new as well under the new framework program. The secondments are up to 1/3 of the fellowship duration. And now what we also have that it's new, we have the introduction of the MSCA COFUND Seal of Excellence for application is scoring equal or higher than 85%. Next slide, please. Now, the award criteria, one more, please. Yes. So here we have the award criteria for COFUND. I'm not going to go very much in detail here because otherwise I'm going to be talking for a very long time. But you have a very detailed information if you download the template. There are the instructions in the template, and there it says exactly what you have to address in each criteria and sub-criteria. So when the evaluators are assessing the proposals, they are giving exactly that template that says all the things that they have to look for. So if you follow the template, if you address all the things that are there, it's already a very good start, because there is nothing less or more that we give the evaluators. It's based on what we expect to be addressed under each criteria. With regard to the weight, we have under excellence, we have 50%, impact 30%, and quality and efficiency of the implementation is 20%. For the excellent, as you see, we are going to be looking at the quality of the selection and the recruitment process. We want to see how transparent, how fair, merit-based, and we equal in a way that offers the same possibilities to all applicants. So that's what the evaluators will be looking at. And they will also look at the appointment conditions of the researchers. This in the past on the Horizon 2020 used to be addressed under implementation, and now it's moved to excellence, because we consider that the package offered to the researchers is of course very important. Among that, you also see that we will be looking at research options offered by the program, at the quality of the research and training program, of the supervision and career guidance, and the impact and the strengthening of human resources in the good practice at the institutional, regional, and national or international level. And the credibility of the proposed measures to enhance the career perspectives of the researchers, the suitability and quality of the measures to maximize the expected outcomes with regard to dissemination and exploitation of results. And in implementation, we will be looking at the work plan, the management structure, assessment of risks, and so on, and the quality and capacity of the host institutions and participating organizations in case they are partners. But as I said, you have a very detailed information in the proposal template. Next slide, please. So budget structure and implementation. One more, please. So as I mentioned to you, we have some new categories under Horizon Europe. We have, as I mentioned earlier, the long-term leave allowance and the special needs allowance. If applicable, the beneficiary can apply that at any time during the implementation of the project. And you see also the COFUND allowance that you pay. We pay that per month for the researcher. So in the case of the doctoral programs, we pay 2,800 euros. In the case of the postdoctoral programs, we pay 3,980 euros. And this is the minimum remuneration that we require the research to be paid. So that's when I said that now under Horizon Europe, we pay the minimum required, which was not the case in Horizon 2020. Next slide, please. Now, still talking about the budget of the co-funded program, you will see that in the proposal template that we ask the applicant to specify in the proposal the total cost of the proposal program, and in particular, the amounts that will be offered to the research and to the organizations that implement the program. And as I said to you earlier, the package, let's say, the salary and package and package of benefits offered to the researcher have now moved to excellence. And this table, you see that in the proposal, the template that should also be included under excellence, so that the evaluator can assess if the conditions that are being offered to the researchers are good. Next slide, please. Still some more novelties compared to Horizon 2020, but this I have already mentioned. The EU contribution covers the minimum remuneration and can be used more flexibly, meaning that even though we do pay the minimum remuneration, it does not mean that you have to use the amount that we pay to cover the salary of the researcher. You could use that for training, for research costs, as far as, of course, that you pay the minimum remuneration required. So you could use that more flexibly. I mentioned that already, that we have what we call a long-term leave allowance. This allowance covers personal costs incurred by the beneficiaries in case of researchers' leave, which includes maternity leave, parental, maternity, paternity leave, any sick leave or any special leave, which is longer than 30 consecutive days. We also have the special needs allowance for researchers with disability, and this allowance can contribute to the acquisition of special needs items and service for disabled researchers. And as I said also earlier, those two allowances can be requested at any time during the project implementation when the need arises. Next slide, please. Still talking about project implementation, each beneficiary or implementing partner, and in that case it will recruit the researcher, will have to employ the researcher under a full contract of employment or equivalent direct contract with full social security benefits. In the case that this is forbidden by national law, but from experience, I can tell you this is really rare, because most of the organizations are able to offer a full contract of employment for the researcher. Then the researcher could be employed under a fixed amount fellowship. And in that case, the living allowance would be halved, and the beneficiary must be ensured that the researcher enjoys a minimum of social security coverage. If that's the case, of course, you needed to make sure you justify this very well in the proposal. Because, as I said, the standard, let's say, way is that all researchers are employed under a full contract of employment. Next slide, please. So this I also mentioned earlier, the selection of researchers must follow an open, a transparent, merit-based, impartial, and equitable way. The vacancies should be internationally advertised and then also published, but you need to make sure that they are published under your access. In the case of the postdoctoral programs, the selection must be based on international peer review. Having said that, even though this is not a requirement for the doctoral programs, you need to make sure that the selection must include evaluators from outside the consortium, fully independent of the institutions or institution, which is or are, in the case of partners, participated in the program. The training program should offer a variety of opportunities for researchers to experience secondments, included intersectoral ones, and they should benefit from training in research and transferable skills, as well as innovative and interdisciplinary elements of the proposed program. So the evaluators will look for this benefit for the researchers, of course. Both doctoral and postdoctoral researchers must devote to the program full-time. They should be employed on a full-time basis. However, part-time can be allowed for personal or family reasons with a prior agreement of REA. And in that case, but part-time for professionals reasons can be requested only for COFUND postdoctoral researchers. Next, please. Oh, now, yes, the details about the call. So I'm about to end here now. So the call has opened today, and I have checked myself. The link is now open. You have all the documents needed for you to apply. As I said, the proposal template contains a lot of useful information. Of course, the work program, the guide for applicants as well. Anyway, just coming back to the call open today, we have the closing date on the 9th of February, and we have a budget of 95 million euros. And yes, if you, of course, have any questions, I'm sure that the NSP will be happy to answer any questions you may have. And yes, we are also ready to answer any questions, any doubts in case you have any, of course. That's all from me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Great. Thank you very much, Alexandra. And we'll hold all questions until the panel session a little earlier. And just to remind everyone, you can enter your questions into the Q&A function. So now to our case study, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to Dr. Patrick Morrissey. Patrick, I can see you're sharing your screen, which is great. And just to reiterate that Patrick is coordinator of the COFUND project Sparkle and is centre manager of the SFI Centre IPIC. Over to you, Patrick.
Great, thank you, Jane. And did that share? They're just checking.
Perfect. Yes, you can see it. Yeah.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk to you today about Sparkle at IPIC. So training Europe's photonics research leaders. So well, firstly, I'm just going to explain what IPIC is. So the background, so IPIC is the SFI Centre for Photonics. We're hosted primarily in Tyndall National Institute. And what we do really is work, develop and fabricate everything from materials, devices such as lasers to complete subsystems. So, and because of the nature of what we're doing, the facilities are critical to us, and hence why we're hosted in Tyndall, and you can see the facilities we have there. And also what's happening now is that we've outgrown those facilities, so the plan is that we will have new building in the next couple of years, which you're seeing in the bottom right-hand side. So it's quite an exciting environment, and we're quite lucky to have these advanced facilities. But it's not just in Tyndall. So we also, as you can see over on the right-hand side, we've researchers based across DCU, Trinity, Galway, UL, UCC, and MTU as well. So it's quite a national centre, and you can see our PhDs and postdocs are spread right across those RPOs, but all of them get the opportunity to participate in training in Tyndall and access to facilities. So then to IPIC. So if we look at the Photonics Centre at Tyndall and the researchers across the other RPOs, in total we have around 220 researchers at the moment, and every year we've around 30 PhD level trainees. So these are PhDs or postdocs that depart us, and of them today it says they're 60%, but actually it's nearly 70% now of our trainees go to industry within a number of years of leaving the centre. So there's a huge pull from industry for the skills we have, and there's very much a shortage of skills, not just in Ireland, but right across the world in this area, in particular for experienced researchers. And that's the reason why it brought us to thinking about Sparkle, because of this demand. And what we decided to do is to run a COFUND program at the fellowship level in order to increase the number of trainees coming through a training program so they can primarily transition on into industry. And then finally, just the sectors we're in. So it's primarily optical communications, also medical devices, unsurprisingly in Ireland, given the huge number of companies here and the growing interest in photonics. And also there are other sectors such as agri-tech, etc., where our trainees go to. So a small bit on the proposal. I'm going to talk a bit about the how and the what, because primarily for me, when we come to approach writing proposals, there's two main sections, how, I guess the what, firstly, what we're going to do in the proposal, and then secondly, how we're going to execute that work within the proposal. And I guess if I reflect on most proposals, what we tend to find is that the what dominates research proposals. So the what being, what's the current state of the art? How are you going to advance the state of the art? And what is the detailed research program that you're going to do through the proposal if funded? And then there's typically a small bit, maybe 20% on details like project planning, dissemination, etc. So how you're going to do it. But what I found is that when it came to this particular call, that actually it was completely inverted. So in the Marie Curie COFUND, the bulk of the wording is around how you're going to do it. And you can see here a list of the things that you need to put into proposals, such as dissemination of the open call. You need a information pack that needs to be shared out there, selection process, evaluation criteria, international peer review panel, etc. So there's quite a structured program to the call overall. And all of that needs to be detailed correctly within the proposal. So when I look at the proposal overall, that's the bulk of the proposal here. So it's a bit different from the normal proposals. But the good thing here, when it comes to this detail on the what, as Jane and Yvonne and others have explained, that a lot of that information is out there. So a lot of that is best practice, and it will be shared with the team. So I would say do reach out to Jane and Co, because their experience here and their knowledge in best practice is very much welcomed, I would say. And that takes care of a lot of the inputs you need in the proposal. But that said, I think for me, I would say I find that a bit boring because it's a well-structured program around recruitment, etc. And it doesn't really bring out the excitement of your specific proposal. And hence, that's where the what, I think, becomes probably more important in this type of proposal than a normal research proposal, because the space you have to articulate this is limited. And here, I guess what you're trying to do is saying, why is your proposal different to other ones? So and try to also bring out the excitement and the differentiating part of the proposal. So questions like, why are you pursuing the award? Why should it be funded? What will the benefits be? This is more about training than research, even though research is a core part of it, but is not written into the proposal. So you've got to think about what training elements will you bring into the proposal, and how will the trainees coming onto the program benefit from your specific program and help them achieve what their career ambitions are. Again, that brings out the slight differentiation to this to a standard research project where it's more about research. This is primarily about training and achieving the outcomes that the trainees hope to achieve by coming onto the program and joining your 2-year fellowship program. And of course, finally, it's around the individual's career progression and where they can go after they've gone through their program here. Of course, the one thing I would say is that 2 years is a very short time frame for somebody to come into a new location, get trained on the basic, tools they'll be using, going in a research project, and within also go into industry secondment and then move to industry. So it's quite a tight time frame. And so preparing them for their training and the next steps is critical, I would say. So why Sparkle? Apologies, there's a long list here, but these are kind of summary points we made out, setting out in the proposal as to why we thought Sparkle should be funded. And it's really, as I said at the top, deliver research excellence and train experience, gender diverse researchers for industry. And that word gender is important for us, in particular, as we're coming from the semiconductor sector, where female representation is typically around 15%, 20% if you're lucky. A key part of our overall research program and training program is to increase the number of females coming through our trainees, the whole way from internships to PhDs to postdocs, etc. So we have a good number of targets around the whole selection and attraction process to try and increase the number of females participating in the program. You can see primarily this is around raising the excellence and impact for your photonics industry, and that also stretches out to manufacturing. We want to address the skills shortage, try and increase the number of women in the space we're working in, as we discussed previously. Opportunity for industry to shape the program, and through this, in the application process, we reach out to those companies, potential secondment partners, not only to get them on board, but also to get their feedback as to how the program should be structured, so the individuals coming through the program would address their needs in the future. Obviously, SMEs are a key part of our community, both in Ireland and across Europe. We want to make sure that we accommodate their needs, not just the multinationals. And then you come down a step forward, going into the region development within Cork. So then the second part of this is, what's the benefit for the fellows? So why would the fellows come on it? And here, obviously cutting edge research environment is important. It's all around research excellence, and we have to ensure that that's present. Expand the set of translation skills. So we have a lot of training around other non-research skills here, such as for us, prototype development, manufacturing, commercialization skills, and we built a program around them to try and help develop their skill sets there. Advanced, innovative and entrepreneurial awareness. So we have a special program called Explore, which brings individuals who are interested in potentially forming their own startup company on a journey where they get that extra skills and evaluate their own idea and help them get to the next step of funding if they want to do that. The industry's placement is obviously really important. I'll come back to that a small bit later about how that is organized. And then the opportunity to network. So we have a huge number of collaborators across Europe, both academic and industrial. And the fellows coming on to our program have the opportunity to build their networks there. In particular, we've seen a lot of individuals join us from outside of Europe and they don't have that network, in particular the industrial network. And that's one of the benefits they would see coming through from this. And indeed, that comes through in the feedback we get from them. And finally, we have an education and public engagement program, of course, that's really important for us. And again, trainees get trained in the skill sets there, and we try to ensure that they all participate in 2 activities per year. So a quick look at what it looks like here. So for us, we had a fellowship program, so it's 27 fellows in particular. We're making them available through 6 calls, and we just closed off the last call. So the last few fellows should be joining us quite shortly. And you can see again, it's around the advertising campaign is around advanced training, the translation of skill sets, it's a common to industry. And you can see here some of the feedback from some of our fellows that came in initially. We've tried to take that on board to optimize the program as we go forward. And you can see here, Pierre-Marie reflected heavily that the program is very focused on his career journey, what training he needs to do here and where he should and how does that help him get to his next steps. And in fact, Pierre Marie left us early, and he secured the role he wanted, which was a permanent research role in France. So a quick benefit and the cost benefit analysis. So when I thought about, well, what are the challenges and maybe the extra work needed for this program versus other programs, or what are the benefits? So there is a lot of overhead in terms of project management going through the recruitment process. So I would say it's critical to have a dedicated program manager or project manager, and we have one in Sparkle who's 50% funded. So that for us is found to be sufficient to support the program. They have to relocate to Ireland. For us, they had time. We opened up our first call a month before the global pandemic happened, so that timing wasn't great. But it brings up the whole issue that you are recruiting internationally, so it's particular for individuals that might need visa applications. That there can be a lengthy transition period into Ireland, and of course they need to adapt to our culture, etc. So that can be significant, but again, all these problems can be managed, just you need a bit of time to make sure they're managed correctly. It's a complex budget because you're funding from two sources, and that needs to be split across all the fellows, and that needs to be shared across many RPOs. So there's a good bit of logistics around that. Again, nothing unsurmountable, but just that it needs time to do. And then, of course, you don't have control over the research projects. Normally, in a research program, the research activity is dictated during the proposal. Here it isn't. It's around the fellows and their journey. So the end research that gets done isn't quite in your control. It's more driven by the fellows as per the program. But on the positive side, it's higher visibility, and it's more attractive to applicants. We found this program, we look at other applications that we have on our websites, to be quite effective in attracting a good number of applicants, and also the quality of those applicants is quite strong. And that's the benefit of advertising a cohort number of awards rather than just individual roles such as postdoc roles. There's a cohort learning experience, and we've tried to maximize that and help the individuals to spend time with each other so that they not only learn from us and from the structures and the RPOs, but also from each other, and to build a cohort where they're building their own network and helping each other through the journey as well, and helping themselves move on to the next stage of their career. We have this personalized career development plan. That's been quite critical, I think, and a lot of positive feedback on individuals, again, highlighting the short time they're with us. It's really important, because that time is so short, that they do set out exactly what they want to achieve in the 2 years, because it's quite easy to get sucked into the day-to-day job, and suddenly you're getting towards the end of 2 years. You haven't achieved all the training you want to do and haven't really thought about the next stage in your career. And so to help that, myself and Elizabeth, our project manager, sit down with them every 6 months. And what we do there is just get assessment, how are they doing against plan, and if there's anything we can do to help them move that forward. So the positive thing as well, the fellows are advancing to their career in Europe and in Ireland. And so we've had 4 coming up to departures now, and 3 of the 4 are based across Europe. And a good example of one of them would be where his secondment was with Agilent, and he came to Ireland in the hope to build a connection to industry. That happened through his secondment, and in fact, 6 months before the fellowship is due to finish, he's going to transition into Agilent in Cork, and he doesn't even have to move. So he's extremely pleased the way the whole process has went, and also in how it's helped him to get to his next stage in his career. And there's an expanded set of experienced researchers, not just for industry, but for ourselves. So we're also trying to fill our talent pipeline for years to come. And the other benefit is that when we talk to our industry partners, they see this increased pool of researchers that they can potentially tap into next year, the year after, etc. So I think I would say is when it comes to proposal, you need to bring these out through the proposal. And I think what's also really critical is the letters from industry. So not that they would give a standard template, yes, I support this application, but they really articulate why they're really interested in this particular application and the individuals that might come through it and how it might help them and meet their recruitment needs in the years to come. So time to plan, I would say the call open today. So I would say as normal, and this everybody gives this advice, but we all tend to ignore it, is start as soon as possible. I think in particular on this call, because of those letters of support from industry. Again, that's not in your control, so you can't rush the companies last minute. You need to give them plenty of time to make sure they're going to be supportive and that they'll go away and get their relevant individual who's comfortable signing the letter and provide it in. So I'd say my suggestion is to start that as early as possible. And what it's all about, it's happy trainees really at the end of the day, and they are progressing. As I said, we do get feedback from them, and the general feedback is positive from them going through the journey, and that's helping us also to adapt our program because it's the first time we've done a COFUND. And it's quite interesting because at this level in postdocs, it tends to be unique journeys. It's the first time we've had a cohort of trainees that we have this cohort-based training across them. And here they're in our semiconductor fab facility where they've just completed a week-long hands-on training program in the fab facility where they get to design and fabricate and test a laser device. So they look happy, I think, there. So in summary, best practice, you know, the team here are brilliant at sharing that. So I would really recommend you to reach out and do that. Articulate the benefits. It's hard in the program to get that excitement and passion over why this should be funded over any other one. So again, you need to think about that and bring that to life. Secondments, how did it work? Reaching out to those companies in advance and getting them to understand the program. So when individuals come on and apply to it, that the companies do put their hands up and saying, yes, I will take a fellow on a secondment, because there are certain challenges there, like the amount of time to spend there. Is the location different location to where the fellow is based? There are IP issues, etc. Again, all of these are manageable, but just need a bit of time up front to make sure that they're ironed out in advance with the companies. Take advantage of the cohort. You know, to ask the question, if you have these group of fellows together, and actually, sorry, PhD students, if you're going that route, how do they work together? How do they learn from each other through the program? So you strengthen the training program for them. And a practicality perspective, good imagery is always good. As we all writing or reading proposals, the more and more words you have, the more you kind of get a bit lost in the words. So I would say definitely bringing on good imagery to help explain maybe the structure of the RPOs you have, the structure of the program, the structure of the recruitment process. I think that's always helpful. And start drafting as soon as possible. And then you can see on the right-hand side, one of our fellows at the moment, Sharagan, his journey was around entrepreneurship. And that's what he set out before joining us. He's doing our Explorer training program. And we can see that his vision is to join a startup at the future. So hopefully we'll hear from him in the next couple of years in that journey. And that's it for me.
Great, many thanks, Patrick. It's really brilliant to hear about Sparkle and the real impact, I suppose, that the program is having on individual fellows' lives. And I suppose it gives great encouragement as well when you hear that. So thank you for bringing that to us. I'm going to bring in both Patrick and Alexandra to join us in our panel discussion, and just to say thanks to everyone who submitted questions when you were registering. So we've compiled some of these questions. We're going to go through them as quick as we can. And you can also use the Q&A at the bottom of your screens if you want to add additional questions. So if I can ask Alexandra, there's a couple of questions that have come in at registration level. Firstly, thank you, Alexandra, for going through the differences between the call, I suppose, between H2020 and Horizon Europe. One question that came in at registration is the call this year different to last year's call, which was also under Horizon Europe?
Well, there is one change compared to the call last year, is just the requirement to provide the letters of commitment from the partners. In the last call, it was only mandatory for the associated partners to provide the letters of commitment. And this year, both implementing and associated partners have to provide letters of commitment. But the template is there for the letter. So it's just, last year we were encouraging implementing partners to provide, and this year it became mandatory.
Okay, so more than encouragement this year, mandatory this year.
Yes.
And as Patrick said, sometimes those letters can take a while, so it's good to start thinking about that now. Alexandra, we had a few questions in relation to the budget, and particularly to do with the co-funding. I wonder, can I put some of them to you? Would you have any examples of co-funding sources? And are there any restrictions on the type of co-funding sources that could be used?
No, well, there are two restrictions only. The co-funding cannot come from any Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe sources. So that is not allowed. But as far that the funding doesn't come from none of those sources, then it's fine. It can come for regional governments, national governments. It could come from private companies, for the academic sector. There is no restriction with regard to that whatsoever, no.
Okay, and is there any restriction if, like, does the source have to come from the EU or as a member state or an associated country, or is it, could it come?
Yes, so the implementing partners, they must be from the EU member state or associated countries, because those are the partners which can actually recruit the researchers. The associated parties can be anywhere. There is no restrictions with regard to that. Yeah.
Okay, great. And we had a question on our Q&A about the how the co-fund is structured financially. So for instance, for the PhD program with the 2,800, and the question was, is 1,400 from the MSCA and the 1,400 from the beneficiary and implementing partners? And is there a percentage that has to be reached? So I wonder, could you just clarify the 2,800?
I'm not sure I understood correctly the questions, but I will explain how it works. So basically, we pay the 2,800, which is the minimum required for the researcher to receive. Okay. Now, if the beneficiary wants to pay the 2,800, whether this comes from us, because he could use this amount that we pay to pay the researcher for the fellow. But maybe he wants to use that amount for something else, for researcher costs, for training. He can do that, but then he would have to find this 2,800 from somewhere else to pay the fellow. You know, so I mean, he can use it flexibly. It doesn't have to go to the fellow what we pay, but the minimum must be paid to the fellow. And in the past, it was not the case, because whatever we pay should go directly to the fellow with that amount. Now it's not like that anymore.
Great, thank you, Alexander. And is there any percentage of matched funding that has to be reached? So should it be 50? No, there's no percentage.
This comes every year, this question. Yes. There is no percentage. No, there is no minimum required. No, there isn't.
Great. And Patrick, I might bring you in on the budget, because I suppose you were on the ground trying to work this out. How long did it take I suppose compiling the budget, and then once you were awarded, you mentioned that you found it kind of complex to be managing the two budgets?
Yeah, it's complicated because you have a structure from the Marie Curie side, and then you'll have a structure from your co-funding, depending where it originates from. And so therefore, and every time for every fellow, the budget has to be split. So there's 2 accounts for every fellow. And once you get to know, it's one of these things, it just needs a bit of time to get familiar with it, and having a good finance person with you helping organize that is really helpful. But then, of course, where it gets extra complicated is every time you hand a fellow to another university, you have to explain the structure to the finance person on the other side. And that's where the more of these in Ireland, the better, because typically now universities have somebody who's familiar with the structure, whereas when we were starting, we didn't have that. So we had to have that conversation many times over. But it's one of those, again, it's one of those things that's manageable. You just have to put the time and effort in and make sure you have a good finance person that understands the rules to make sure it's implemented. But I think here it's got easier from the new rules here, which is good.
Great. And Patrick, how many fellows were recruited, were planned in the recruitment for Sparkle?
27. Hopefully, we're going to close the 27 in the next couple of months when we go through the recruitment process. And I see there Jennifer has asked a question on that recruitment process. That's something we've kind of struggled with as well, that the fellows have to have freedom of movement, including the research area. But of course, you don't have, 1,000, 1 million researchers to take the complete freedom there. So when fellows apply in, they have to have a supervisor. So they have to do that matching process across the supervisors you have, but they're driving that program. So they decide which supervisor is a potential best match for them. And then they get into a discussion about what the research project is. So you have to apply that because they have to have a supervisor. But equally, and I think with us, because it's at the fellowship level, they're more experienced than the PhD, so they do have a heavy say in the research direction they want to go in. But clearly, not only the knowledge of the supervisor, but the facilities available to them will constrain some bit what they finally come out with at the end of it. And I think actually there's an interesting point there as well. When some of the feedback we get through the review process is that some of the reviewers are always trying to figure out not only obviously the quality of the applications through the scoring system that was shared, but one of the challenges come up is saying, well, did it really come from the fellow, or did it come from the supervisor? And that's always a debate that goes on through it as well, trying to figure out to make sure that you're fair across all the fellows and that it's really the fellows' idea that's been assessed, not the supervisors. And that's where the interview stage is really critical, because you can dive into a bit more detail and try and figure out what contribution have the fellows made to that program.
Yes, and Alexandra, am I right that it's I think in the guide for applicants for the postdoctoral fellowship it says that fellows should be encouraged to write their own proposal, and I suppose that question then, how do applicants manage that when you're trying to give a list of supervisors in the proposal stage, and then but the fellow can actually write their own proposal? I wonder, do you have any advice on that?
Lisa, but the postdoctoral is a more advanced researcher training. So of course the fellow should be writing the proposal. Of course, there's a different stage of the career of the researcher, but of course that doesn't mean that he should not have a supervisor. It's just that the type of supervision is different when it comes to a postdoctoral, which would going to be much more independent, I would say, than a doctoral. Fellow. So this is just a specificity of each of the programs. So I don't know if maybe I didn't understand the question correctly, but I see them quite different. Supervision, of course, is important for both of them. But of course, the level of supervision that you would expect for a doctor would be much more, much closer, much higher, let's say, than for a postdoctoral in that sense.
Yes, yeah, great. And evaluators would be aware of
definitely. They are very aware, definitely.
Great. We have a question in about the an applicant is planning a bid for 16 to 20 fellows. Is there any advice on the numbers they should apply for? So is there an optimal number? I suppose this is a little bit like we had a doctoral network webinar recently. Is there a perfect number of beneficiaries? It's a similar type of question. Is there a perfect number of fellows that people should apply for?
No, there is no perfect number, but it's very important that the applicant, when he proposes something, it has to be something that it's feasible to be implemented and credible to be implemented. So yes, there could be even be 3 fellows. The minimum is 3. So there could be cases of 3 fellows. There is nothing wrong with that. But if you propose a program with 50 fellows, there is nothing wrong with that either. I think Patrick said he has about 30, 27. So there is nothing wrong at all with that either. But they're very important that that whatever it's explained in a proposal is credible. It seems like, okay, this is like something that it's achievable. So don't go be over ambitious, but without some credibility, of course. And I think that's what is important, because that's at the end of the day, that's what the evaluators will be looking at. Okay, does this sound feasible? Is it feasible to be implemented or not? And yes, I think that's what the applicant should focus.
Great. And just one final question then, which is a very technical question. Is it now, with greater flexibility with the budget, is it mandatory to have a mobility, have mobility included as one of the categories?
No, it's not mandatory. Okay, they can offer if they wanted to. There is no problem with that. And in the unit cost that offer in that amount of 2,800, that includes the living hours and the mobility, as we called. Okay, that's what it's included there. But some beneficiaries, they say, okay, this is the salary, and they offer a mobility extra, so it's like a top up for their salary. But anyway, in principle, when we talk about that amount, it includes the living and mobility in principle, but it doesn't have to be like that. They can offer more.
Great, thank you. I suppose I can see the time there. It's just 3 o'clock, so I'd like to bring our session to a close. I want to very much thank our speakers today, Patrick and Alexandra. Thanks for your valuable insights on perspectives, and it was great to have you both here. I want to wish everyone a very pleasant afternoon. We have some interesting links on our chat, including case studies from last year's webinar as well. But for now, I'd like to say goodbye and hope to speak to everyone again shortly. All the best. Thank you.